Hello everyone, I'm really happy to be here. I will start talking about my project called Forest Ruins, and I started covering this story back in 2020. It was a deforestation story at the beginning, and for that reason I was sleeping in a tent for a few weeks, and one day I started to listen to some indigenous children talking next to me in a fallen tree that was next to my tent. And I knew they were telling jokes because I could hear they were laughing a lot, but I couldn't understand anything. And this went all night long, and I felt like I was in a dream, or maybe I was just in another country. But actually, I was in the Guarani Imbiá territory, the smallest indigenous land in Brazil, located inside São Paulo, the biggest city in the Americas with its 22 million inhabitants. The Guarani communities are about 1,000 people located in 9 villages, and as they beautifully say, they are not urban indigenous because they were there before the city even exists. In this picture, you can see a Guarani warrior protesting in the top of the Jaraguá Peak, the home to the Guarani people and one of the last remains of Atlantic forest in the cityscape. Today, the Guarani's land is surrounded by highways, such as this one on the right, called the Anhanguera Highway, which in Guarani is a word that says that means the devil's path. It was a traditional route of the European invaders to the countryside, looking for precious metals and indigenous slaves. When there's fire in the Guarani territory, the Guaranis are the ones fighting the fire. Most of the time, they are abandoned by governments. The real estate speculation has never stopped advancing on their territories. And nowadays, several projects threaten their way of life, such as the construction of a dozen of buildings, criminal fires to expel them from their lands, and a legislative bill that wants to stop recognizing their right to the land. But for me, this is not a story about their pains or their sorrows. The Guarani Imbiá community in the megalopolis is a story of hope. Even after 523 years old of destruction and horror caused by the European invasion, children are still learning Guarani language before they learn Portuguese. They have managed to maintain their language, but also their religion, their faith, the nature around them, and a substantial part of their way of life. This is a New Year ceremony called the Arapiaú that they celebrate in August. And of course, to do so, to maintain all these aspects of their lives in such a close contact to the urban development, it's not an easy task for them, as the signs of urban structure interfere in their lives. As in this photo, in the Piauí village, where a child swims in a river that his parents and his grandparents swam in, but it's now being piped. Indigenous culture, habits, and knowledge has been added to what today is known as the Brazilian culture. The Guaranis love soccer, and they can spend hours playing in championships between their own villages. But did you know that one of the oldest documents in history about the practice of soccer was written in 1639 by Spanish priest Antonio de Montoya? He was observing the Guaranis in Paraguay by that time, and they had this game called the Manga Nemborosai that literally translates to ball game with the feet. So the Guaranis were probably the inventors of soccer as we know today, and soccer in the UK happened like 200 years before in Europe. Appropriating new technological and communication tools has also been a fundamental way to maintain their culture, to to survive. In this photo, 17 years old Guarani photographer Richard Weramirim plays video games in his cell phone with his friends, but when you listen to them playing, they're using the game radio and they're only speaking in Guarani language still. Considering that cities currently consume about 75% of global energy and emit around 6% of greenhouse gases, this is the decisive moment to question the urban structure. The climate emergency is forcing us to reshape our imaginary of collective life, to even rethink the possibility of cities as they are. The existence and resistance of the Guarani Imbia in the Jaraguá Peak in São Paulo prove that there are other ways to relate to the earth beneath us, even if you are under pressure by the urban sprawl. Their strength is a provoking reminder to the Western culture to rethink its way of life and look back at cities as our own environment. As the Brazilian activist Chico Mendes once said, ecology without identity and class consciousness is just a gardening. Thank you. We have more time.
Hi, everybody. Oh, it started. It's so incredible to be here and hear all the stories. Makes me wonder, what am I doing here as an artist? I don't have one singular story, but I will share my process. This image here is from my project called Landscape Sublime. This one was inspired by San Francisco skies on, I was told, September 8th. It was the date of 2020, all those orange skies. And what you see here is a tableau. It's a three-dimensional collage that I assembled in the studio, a practice of about 10 years now. Inspired, you might see some traces of Cubism, Russian constructivism. That's where I grew up, even though most of my adult life I spent in America, but it's in my DNA as an artist, so avant-garde of the 1910s and 20s, and this is not photoshopped, this is sculpted in the studio, and the images themselves are culled from the internet, from public domain in Creative Commons. So there were so many images of this ominous orange skies that just to channel my feelings of climate anxiety, I started putting these together in this assembly, and it's nothing new to the form of collage, to be channeling complicated feelings of a chaotic world. Some of you might have heard of Dada, the movement in Germany in the 1920s. Some of my favorite artists come from that movement, Hannah Höch. Anyways, this is the process behind this tableau. It's supposed to be just 1 second, but it's half a day condensed into this second. So this is behind the scenes, and I've been making these collages for years and years, including some larger scale commissions. So this is my Grand Canyons. Back in Russia, I was an early adopter of Flickr. Maybe some of you know of that platform. That was pre-Instagram, and I grew up in a typical Moscow neighborhood, gray, brutalist architecture. Going out in nature was very much a special occasion. And so for me, traveling to all those beautiful lands through imagery was a means to escape. And I found art and art community as a means to escape as well, many things. So this is my Grand Canyons. I still haven't been, so this is the same method where I assembled this out of public domain images, and this enormous installation was up in Switzerland. If you ever travel to Miami, I have them in Miami International Airport. That's where I live now. So this is what I thought I would be doing in Miami when I moved in 2016. It was the hottest summer on record, and I'm a person coming from Nordic climate. So I grew up in Moscow, and then I moved to Illinois, and then I was in Western Massachusetts. This was new, this subtropical climate. I started going out and photographing what I was seeing as just potential source material for my collages. And then I realized I don't have to make collages anymore. The city is already a life-scale collage of its own idealized images. And in the cracks of those fantasy renderings of the future Miami, you can see flooded foundation, you can see crumbling concrete. And so this dichotomy between the facade, the idealized presentation, the so to say, propagandistic view of the future of a place was very, it felt like home. I grew up with socialist realism propaganda, and so questioning the images is very much part of my practice, and that's why it's always the medium for me is not only the means to accomplish these results, but also a subject of inquiry. So there's subtle humor throughout the project. Don't take it at face value. This is not what climate change looks like in Miami, although it felt immoral for me not to document what I was seeing. I mean, in the past 7 years, we've been through 5 hurricanes. So this lopsided camouflage that conceals nothing on the left, and the right side some eroded soil, and this plant. This is an aerial photograph of the land that's being cleared for real estate development, and in the background you can see some lime, some mining going on. All of this is atop our Biscayne aquifer that's getting polluted, and there are levels of intervention there, even all those trees, and this is all in the Everglades, bordering the Everglades. The trees is an invasive species, so there's layers of artifice that are occurring. You hardly see any people in my images. Oh, I need to speed up, but there are alligators. This one is in this preserve. This is the land on the left side. You can see the land that gets developed into waterfront homes on the right side. In 2017, we got hit by a major hurricane, Category 4 Katrina. And so this is a very personal image to me, and I rarely show it. It's the image of my son wearing a bicycle helmet in our flooded garage in an old condo in Miami Beach. It was a lifelong dream for me growing up in Moscow to live by the ocean. I'd manifested it. When I couldn't sleep, this is what I would imagine, just seeing the ocean out of my window. So it came at a cost higher than waterfront taxes. This is where my studio is located. The water is coming in from the drains. This is salt water, and this is just around the corner from the famous Miami Beach Convention Center where the Art Basel takes place. They don't see this picture, but this is just a month after the Art Basel took place. Graffiti these days in Miami is almost a sure sign of gentrification. On the right side is a neighborhood called Little Haiti, Miami, that hardly has any Haitians anymore. This is 2019, and this has already been all painted white, and it's luxury offices. So this area is quite elevated, 14 to 17 feet above sea level, versus Miami Beach, 3 to 4 feet. So now this became the most lucrative real estate in Miami. Some more scenes from Hollywood, Florida. Has anyone seen the movie Truman Show? That was filmed in Florida. So I'm trying to look at, again, the past, present, and future of a place, potentially in one image. I'll flip through these really quickly because this is too long. This is Mexico Beach in the Panhandle, a road that keeps getting destroyed by hurricanes, and of course, new developments on the west coast of Florida. This is from just 2 weeks ago when I couldn't do our Zoom meeting. So this is in Fort Lauderdale, 3 to 4 feet of standing water. And bookmaking is really important to my practice. I hardly do any photojournalism, although I say yes to all of the assignments that come my way. They just hardly ever come. So these are the books that I've published. The most recent one is called Image Cities on the right side. And then I'm currently developing this new project called Transformations, which looks at climate solutions and adaptation. And actually, I brought my camera to San Francisco, so if anybody has any tips, please come up. And that is a wrap. So, Rafael.
We don't have moderators.
We don't have moderator.
We moderate ourselves.
This is improv. With your practice, what Thank you for understanding. What inspires you? And speaking of climate and action and art and activism, where do you draw the line? And what inspires your project? And what are you trying to accomplish with your work?
I think for me, this doing this, what led me to this project was basically. At the beginning, I thought I was documenting the story of the Guaranis, you know. But after a while, after I'm entering the 4th year of documentation, I understood that actually I was looking at also at myself as someone, as a white person in Brazil, born and raised in São Paulo. That it took me 30 years to get to know that the indigenous that were there before the city even exist were there, and I didn't know about him. So I think part of what drives me is it's recognizing my own white ignorance about about their being there and what's happening and what was there before the invasion and everything. So I think this is basically what led me to the project itself. But I think getting attention to, like you can talk about this with many people in São Paulo and they would not have any idea of the situation, of the existence of the Guarani people there, like in this proximity to the city. And I think there's one path that is the traditional one, that making a good story, publishing it, and having attention. But there's other one that is being involved in recognizing the privileges and using our privilege to their cause, to their lives. And I think this is how I see it. And I was also wondering, for you, what do you think that us as storytellers, as artists, how your work or my work, what are the conditions, what it can generate in terms of, I don't know, proposing solutions or trying to look at new horizons for the issues we are talking about, mostly about the climate crisis, for example.
Yeah, I must say I really enjoyed all the stories here, and yours in particular. I can relate to that. I'm not sure if I can classify myself as a storyteller per se. I'm definitely an observer. What I'm trying to accomplish with my work, that is, as you saw, is largely void of figures or action. Somebody said, it's actually really interesting, an observation, you hardly engage with people. That's true. Most of the people that are in my images and in my books are people who asked me to photograph them when I'm walking around the street, and I'm usually talking to myself and I'm just processing this information. I really relate to what American photographer Walker Evans said, where he mentioned that he disappears in the street. That's my favorite mode of operation. The goal is to make the work really relatable and open, and to an extent almost abstract, where anybody, any geography could potentially, there's some maybe giveaways of a tropical climate, but somebody could place their own geography onto this and see that the issue pertains to everybody. And also, because I'm hardly ever portraying things in this acute moment of catastrophe or drama, that to me psychologically, when I see images like that, implies resolution. So I know there's plenty of environmental photography that accomplishes that very successfully, so I needed to find my own path, and that was the path of nonlinear narrative. Narrative that's structured out of associations of images together. It's lyric documentary. It's a poetic portrait of a place. And in terms of activism, I believe that art doesn't operate in this direct manner, unlike photojournalism, for instance. But it accomplishes things by osmosis. So it's sort of this longer trickle effect that happens with art. At least that's what I've noticed with my exhibitions, when I'm actually able to have conversations with developers and the government and people all throughout political spectrum. So that's where I see, I guess, my place.
Okay, I don't know. Thank you. We're done? Yes. I just want to say a special thanks to Catchlight for creating this opportunity, for being a Catchlight Fellow. It's been super transformative for me, and especially to Elizabeth Christ and Tom Corrin that helped us and think about all of this that we're doing today. I'm really grateful. Thank
and I'm
you
joining
so much.
on that. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for inviting me. Thank you. It's been such a pleasure.